Story 1. In 2019, I was working my 7th season as a backcountry ranger in a stretch of Pacific Northwest forest that I won't name here. Let's just say it's remote. So remote, we go weeks without seeing other people outside of scheduled check-ins. I like that about the job. The silence. The routine. The sense that out there, the forest didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. But there are some things you don't forget, no matter how many seasons you work. This is one of them. I was doing a sweep through a lesser-used trail segment, only accessible by a 4x4 road that had been washed out the year before. No registered hikers were logged for that region. It should have been empty. But halfway through the patrol, I saw smoke. Thin. Faint. Rising through the canopy like someone had started a fire not long ago. At first, I thought it might be an illegal camper. Not uncommon. I radioed it in and went to check it out. I wasn't expecting what I found. The campsite was small, just a fire pit, a tent, and a folding table. No one was there. But it didn't look abandoned. Not really. There was a campfire still burning low in the pit. Small flames. Just enough to say someone had fed it not long before I arrived. A portable stove sat nearby, still hot. And on the table was a plate. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Sliced fruit. Steam still curling off it in the cold air. No bite marks. No signs of struggle. Just a freshly made breakfast. Waiting for someone. I called out. Nothing. Circled the camp twice. No sign of movement. No prints beyond a few faint ones, all from the same boots. And the ground was soft. Anyone leaving would have left a trail. But there was nothing. The tent was zipped shut. I called again, more forcefully this time, then opened it. Inside, a sleeping bag. A neatly folded shirt. A paperback mystery novel face down like someone had just stepped away. And tucked into the side pocket of the backpack beside the sleeping bag was a driver's license. The name matched a hiker who had registered at a completely different ranger station 3 days earlier, over 70 miles away. According to the logs, that person should have been on an entirely different trail, at least a 2-day hike from here. And they hadn't checked back out. But here their gear was. And their breakfast. Still hot. I stayed at the site for 3 hours. Radioed the nearest station. No response. I left markers, flagged the trees, and set motion cams around the perimeter in case the camper returned. Then I waited. But no one came back. By late afternoon, the fire had died down. The eggs had gone cold. The fruit was buzzing with flies. I did one last sweep before preparing to hike out. That's when I noticed something that had escaped me earlier. Just past the tree line, maybe 40 feet into the brush, was a narrow trail of crushed grass. Not wide enough for a person. More like someone had been crawling. I followed it for about 10 yards. It ended at a tree. And carved into the bark, in small, clean cuts, were 3 short lines. Just 7, 7, 7. No initials. No symbols. No explanation. Just those numbers. The same number burned into the bottom of the metal plate back at the table. We filed a missing persons report that night. A full search was launched. They never found the hiker. No body. No backpack. No clothing. Nothing that would suggest they'd even been out there, aside from the campsite. The food. The fire. And that license. I think about that morning a lot. Not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. No sign of struggle. No attempt to run. No footprints leading away. It was like the person had stood up in the middle of breakfast. and simply stepped out of the world.
Story 2.
Somewhere around mile 5, I stopped hearing planes overhead. That's when I knew I'd gone deep enough. It was October, cold enough to keep casual hikers away, but not yet snowed in. I'd planned 3 days of solitude in the backcountry near Mount Adams. Just me, my tent, and a thicket of towering evergreens that pressed in from all sides. The first 2 nights were uneventful. Quiet. Still. Exactly what I wanted. But the third night, something changed. I fell asleep to the sound of crackling embers and the distant wind threading through the trees. Nothing unusual. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. I know because I checked my watch. Twice. The woods were dead silent. No wind. No bugs. Just a thick, heavy quiet that pressed into the fabric of my tent. Then I heard it. Scratch. It came from just behind my head. Not loud, but deliberate. A dry, dragging sound across the nylon. I lay still, my eyes wide open. Then again. From the opposite side. I sat up slowly. My sleeping bag rustled loud in the silence. The scratching stopped. I waited, holding my breath, straining to hear movement outside. Nothing. I told myself it was an animal. Maybe a porcupine sniffing around. But then I heard the scratching again. This time, it came from 3 different sides of the tent. Simultaneously. As if something, or multiple things, were crawling around me. No footsteps. No breathing. Just that dry, deliberate sound. Like fingernails on canvas. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent flap a few inches. Swung the light out. Nothing. Just dark trunks and frost-covered ferns. No eye shine. No scurrying. Not even a breeze. I waited. Then stepped out barefoot into the cold. I circled the tent with the light, hard thudding. There were no animals. No claw marks. But I did find something. Just behind the tent was a single footprint. Barefoot. Human. Pressed deep into the cold soil. It wasn't mine. The heel was wider. The toes were splayed unnaturally far apart. And it was fresh. I scanned the forest beyond, but it was too dark to see far. I kept the knife in my hand all night. Didn't sleep. Just waited for the sun. By morning, I found more prints. Some circled the tent. Some led back into the woods. But it was what I found just beyond the tree line that stopped me cold. Tucked behind a cluster of ferns, maybe 20 feet from my campsite, was a small clearing I hadn't noticed before. There, half buried in the leaves, were signs of a meal. A rusted metal plate. A dented thermos. Grease-stained napkins. Bones picked clean. Still warm to the touch. No tent. No backpack. No fire ring. Just the remains of a fresh meal, and the smell of something recently cooked lingering in the air. Someone had been there. Close. Eating quietly in the dark while I slept. I packed in minutes. Left the coffee pot and my gear bag behind. I drove 6 hours without stopping. Never went back. And I still don't know what's worse. That someone followed me into the woods. Or that they were already there, eating dinner, while I sat by the fire. Completely unaware.
Story 3.
I used to think getting lost in the woods was impossible. You just follow the trail, right? You look for blazes, listen for running water, check your compass. Simple stuff. But nature doesn't care how confident you are. It doesn't care how many hiking forums you read, or how many weekend treks you've done. Out there, confidence becomes a liability. I learned that the hard way last September. I was hiking the Sandstone Loop in Oregon, a 14-mile trail through thick pine forest that dips into a gorge before winding back around. It was supposed to be a solo overnight trip. Nothing extreme. I brought the usual: water, trail bars, a lightweight tent. I left my plan with a friend and hit the trail early. By noon, I'd reached the gorge. That's when I made a dumb call. There was an unmarked side path, narrow, overgrown, but clearly used. I figured it was a shortcut. Just a little deviation to shave off some time. 10 minutes in, the trail vanished. I turned back, but somehow I'd already lost the original path. No markers. No signs. Just trees. Endless rows of silent pine. I told myself to stay calm. I checked my phone. No signal. GPS wouldn't load. Still, I wasn't scared. Yet. I started walking in the direction I thought was back. But the woods all looked the same. I tried using the sun, but clouds rolled in. It got darker. Colder. By late afternoon, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I'd been walking in circles. Same fallen log. Same boulder with a cracked edge. I passed them both twice. That's when fear started to creep in. Quietly. Like fog. It was about 6 p.m. when I heard it. A voice. Faint but human. Off to my left, deeper in the trees. I froze. Strained to listen.
Nate?
That's what it said. My name. It was soft, barely a whisper, but clear enough to make my blood run cold. I hadn't told anyone I was going off trail. No one knew where I was. No hikers had passed me all day. And yet, there it was again.
Nate, come here.
Same voice. Same exact tone. But the weirdest thing? It sounded like me. My voice. My cadence. It wasn't an echo. It was a mimic. I should have run. Every instinct told me something was wrong. But I walked toward it. Step by step through the trees, pushing branches aside. My breath shallow. My body stiff. There was no logic to it, just this horrible, curious pull. The voice kept calling. Always from just out of view. Nate, you're almost here. The forest started to change. The air grew colder. The ground turned soft and spongy beneath my boots, like the moss had thickened. The trees grew tighter together. Shadows twisted between trunks even though the sun hadn't fully set. Then I saw it. A figure, standing behind a pine. Motionless. Just far enough that I couldn't see a face.
Nate.
It whispered again. But this time, I didn't move. Something felt different. That voice, it was off. Too even. Like a recording. Like someone, or something, was playing back a version of me. Like a mask made of sound. I backed away, and the figure stepped out. It looked like me. Same jacket. Same jeans. Same boots. But the face, it wasn't quite right. Too smooth. Too clean. And the eyes blank. Like polished glass. It smiled. But I didn't. It raised its hand and pointed at me. Then it whispered something new.
You're in my place.
I turned and ran. Branches tore at my arms. Thorns ripped my sleeves. But I didn't care. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. And it wanted me. I ran until I couldn't breathe. I collapsed beside a fallen tree, heart pounding in my ears. The forest was dead silent. And then I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Crunching leaves. Closer.
You don't belong here, Nate.
It was behind me now. I scrambled up, blindly running until the terrain changed. Rocks. A slope. I stumbled down a dry creek bed and hit the bottom hard, pain flaring in my ankle. But I kept crawling. And that's when I saw it. A ranger's shelter. An old wooden shack, boarded up but intact. I hauled myself inside, slammed the door, and braced it with a beam. I sat in the dark, clutching a rusted hatchet I found by the door, waiting for the voice. But it never came. Just wind. Just trees. I spent the night in that shack. Didn't sleep. Just waited. When morning came, I limped out and somehow, by pure chance, stumbled onto a marked trail. A group of day hikers found me 2 hours later. Dehydrated. Muddy. Shaking. They said I was lucky. But luck doesn't explain what I saw. Or what I heard. Or how it knew my name. I still dream about that voice. About the thing that looked like me. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd followed it all the way. If I'd answered. If I'd let it take my place. Because that's what it wanted. To replace me. And maybe, out there in those woods, it's still waiting. Still calling. In my voice.
Story 4.
I've always preferred solitude. Not the kind people chase to retreats and quiet cafes, but real solitude, complete separation. Silence thick enough that your own heartbeat sounds like company. That's what drew me to the woods. That's what made me fall in love with solo camping. Last fall, I took a long weekend off work and drove north to Timberline Ridge, a remote stretch of wilderness where the trail markers start fading after a few miles and you can hike all day without seeing another person. The kind of place where if something goes wrong, it stays wrong. But I wasn't worried. I'd done this many times before. I had my gear. I had my plan. I parked at the gravel trailhead around 3 p.m. on a Thursday. My truck was the only one there. A breeze stirred the trees as I locked up and slung my pack over my shoulders. The air smelled like pine and frost, early fall. That sweet window between the heat of summer and the snap of winter. The forest was alive but calm. Muted. I hiked in about 6 miles before finding a clearing by a creek. The perfect spot. Dry ground, enough space for my tent, and a gentle trickle of water nearby. I set up camp slowly, enjoying the rhythm of it. Unrolling my tent. Gathering a ring of stones for a fire. Watching the shadows stretch long and thin as the sun dipped below the trees. By evening, I had a fire going. I sat on a log with a tin mug of coffee, listening to the pop of burning wood and the soft whisper of the wind through the branches. It felt perfect. Peaceful. Like I was the last person on earth. I went to sleep that night with the rain fly half open, watching the stars blink through the canopy above me. And for that first night, I slept deeply. But on the second night, something changed. It started small. A feeling. One of those quiet instincts you can't fully name. I was sitting by the fire again, sipping coffee like before. But this time, the woods didn't feel the same. The silence had weight to it. Not peaceful anymore. Still, yes, but watching. I kept glancing into the tree line without knowing why. There was no sound. No movement. Just this creeping awareness. As if something just outside the light of the fire had its eyes locked on me. I remember telling myself, out loud, that I was just tired. That I'd been alone a little too long. That sometimes the brain plays tricks when the world gets too quiet. But that feeling wouldn't leave. As night fell, the forest grew darker, and I fed more wood to the fire than usual. I told myself I just liked the warmth. But honestly, I didn't want the light to go out. I stayed up late, waiting for that strange feeling to pass. Around midnight I finally crawled into my tent. I left the flap unzipped again, just like the night before, but this time I couldn't relax. Every little noise outside seemed amplified. A twig snapping. The wind shifting the leaves. A soft rustle in the underbrush. I lay there, staring at the roof of my tent, wide awake. That's when I heard it. A single crack. Like a footstep on dry wood. About 10 yards to my left. I froze. My heart started to beat faster. But I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. I waited. Listening. Hoping it was a falling branch. Or a squirrel. But there was no second noise. Just silence. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe something natural. The forest is full of sounds, right? But my gut kept whispering something else. That it was deliberate. That it had weight. 5 minutes passed. then 10. And finally, I started to doze off. That's when I heard the second sound. Closer. Another footstep. Then a pause. Then what sounded like a slow shift, like someone adjusting their stance in the dirt. Not walking. Just watching. I didn't dare move. I lay stiff in my sleeping bag, flashlight in one hand, barely breathing. Every instinct told me not to speak, not to call out. Just wait. Listen. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe more. Eventually, the sound stopped. But the feeling didn't. I knew I wasn't alone out there. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep. I don't remember how. But when I woke up, the morning was cold and gray. Mist clung low between the trees, curling around the trunks like smoke. The fire had gone out. My gear was undisturbed. Except for the firewood pile. I always stacked my wood neatly, in rows next to the stones. It's a habit. That morning, the pile was scattered. Still there, just disturbed. Like someone had crouched beside it, and moved pieces around without taking anything. I stood there staring at it for a long time, trying to make sense of it. But the more I thought, the worse it felt. Because animals don't do that. And wind doesn't do that. It looked methodical. Like someone had touched everything but hadn't wanted to take anything. That was the last morning I stayed. I packed up slowly, glancing over my shoulder again and again, waiting to hear that same crack in the woods. But it never came. I hiked out as the sun broke through the clouds, and I didn't stop walking until I saw my truck. Even then, even sitting behind the wheel with the door locked, I didn't feel safe. Not really. I've been camping since I was a teenager. I've slept under the stars in deserts, on mountains, and deep in woods far more remote than Timberline Ridge. But I've never felt watched like I did that night. I've never felt studied. And I still don't know what was out there. But I know this much. It wasn't afraid of me. And it wanted me to know it was there. Because whatever it was, it left no trace. No sound as it walked away. No message. No warning. Just silence. And that heavy feeling in the dark. Like I was no longer the only one out there.